Okay, all right. Good afternoon, Child Care Safety Portal Committee members. Thank you for being here, and those of you on the phone, thank you for being here virtually. I'm excited to have our second meeting here. I want to thank Angela and Dawn and staff for the packet of information that you prepared for this meeting. It was really well done. Explained a lot. I'm sure we'll still have questions, Dawn, but I'm sure we all learned a lot from reading this. And Maura and I were just talking about the fact that we really appreciate having recommendations for these three questions we'll be discussing. We think that will facilitate our conversation a lot. So thank you very much. Let's start by introducing ourselves, and we'll just go around the table and then go online. And if you would just say sort of what your role is, what hat you're wearing on this committee, that would be great. I'm Sue Miller. I chair the Early Learning Council, and as such, I'm chairing this committee. Andrea, you're next.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and I am a parent here. I got involved because of an opportunity from someone that works with the Early Learning Division. My son was in child care, and something happened to him, so yeah, he's 3, but he thinks he's 12. He's very independent, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right.
My name is Gary Moore. I'm the Chief of Police in Salem, and Sue kind of strong-armed me to be on this committee. That's why I'm here. But I'm actually on the Governor's Child Welfare Advisory Committee as well. Kind of a nice thing. So, thank you for that.
Hi, my name is Veronica Ochoa, and I'm a parent in Salem. I have a 3-year-old and he's in an in-home licensed child care facility, which I adore, and I love my sister.
Thank you, Veronica.
My name is Stephanie Fortner. I'm the parent of an 18-month-old little girl. And we live in Johnstown, Texas.
That's perfect. Thank you, Stephanie.
I'm Shannon Vandehei, Child Care Resource and Referral Program Director, representing the CCR and ours.
Great. Thank you for being here. And we appreciate it. I think you were online last time. Thank you.
I'm Angela Rodriguez. I'm the Quality Assurance Manager for the Early Learning Division, and I'm the lead staff for this committee. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to keep it short. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jay Messenger. I'm the Legal Enforcement Director for Child Care, and I'm here in my capacity health care.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Bobby Weber. I'm a member of the Early Learning Council. I'm finishing my term, so won't be on council. And I've been a researcher for child care. 50 years. 50 years. That's why I'm retired.
My name is Renee. I am a 24-hour provider in Portland.
I am Dawn Taylor, and I am the Child Care Director of the Early Learning Division, and I'm here as staff advisor. I'm Heidi McGowan, and I'm a consultant, and I have a really long history in child care, very long, and happy to be here.
Being here is a chance to sit down. How about we hop back here where you introduce yourself? Thank you.
Cordell, Early Learning Division, Texas.
Yay, we love him.
My name is Abby Strom. I'm a senior relationship specialist. Tammy is not here.
just kind of give a little shout out to that she's actually the one that really took the lead at developing all this information. And the packet that we then were able to work for the results. So we actually wanted her to also be here to hear the conversations as well as we get ready to prepare like.
Oh, okay, well, thank you very much, Abby. Nice job. A lot of material.
Hi, Kevin Martin, Washington County Jail's office. You guys walked in late with the Starbucks, so I'm sorry.
It's okay. We appreciate you staying awake for the meeting, so that's just fine. Oh, how did you get your name tag? Oh, well, we'll
Sorry.
find out later. And who's on the phone?
This is Reagan Gray with Family Forward Oregon.
Oh, great. Hi, Reagan.
This is Lisa Matos with the Multnomah County Health Department. I'm the health inspector. Actually, I think I lost my internet connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you, but anyway, good thing you can hear me. I'm trying to get online again. But yes, I am the health inspector for child care centers and certified homes in Multnomah County.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. There's on the phone, Bill.
This is Alyssa Chatterjee with the Early Learning Division.
This is Bill Bainey, Deputy Administrator with Self-Sufficiency Program Design.
Great. Welcome, Bill.
Hi, I'm Kara Tachikawa. I'm a child care provider in Bend with Inspire Early Learning Centers.
Welcome. Anybody else on this phone? Okay. All right, welcome everybody here and out there. And at this point, we obviously have, thanks to staff, we have 3 very well-framed questions for us to discuss and respond to today. As you know, at our last meeting, we asked staff if they would please put together recommendations for each of these questions, and we obviously have those in our packet. So that will really help provide a focal point for the conversation. Heidi is going to facilitate this effort. You're going to hear that we're going to break into small groups to discuss those 3 questions to make sure that everybody has a chance to give their reaction, and then we'll come back together, however Heidi organizes us, to share our reactions and the small group discussions, and then hopefully come to consensus on what we as a total committee want to recommend is taken forward to the early. So that's sort of where we're headed. So with that, we'll turn it over to Heidi.
Right. Thank you. So everyone should have a meeting packet in front of you. And folks on the video or phone, you all have your meeting packets that were sent to you from Angela. Yes, we're always there. Folks on the phone, are you able to hear us okay? I love a thumbs up, thank you.
Yeah, depending on where you are in the room, you're good though.
Okay, so we may want to think about that as we're talking, and if we can just do a reminder amongst ourselves that as you're talking to try to speak up loud and point towards the phone. That does make a big difference. All right, yes, towards Angela. Okay, so today, just want to highlight a few things. As Sue said, we're going to walk through those 3 questions. The 3 questions are in the back of your packet, so the last 2 pages. I want to draw your attention to it before we get started diving into background information. You can see question 1. It's 1 question per page, so to keep it really simple. Question 1, we're going to spend time learning about, and then talking about the pros and cons and a draft recommendation that's been provided by the Early Learning Division staff. Question 1, we're going to talk about, should the portal display licensed child care complaints found invalid or unable to substantiate? And Dawn's going to walk us through that for us to really understand what does that mean. We dive in. And then
The second question you'll see on the next page is, how many years of a licensed facility's history should be represented on the portal? How long should it be there? And then that third question will be our last one to dive into is, should the portal display licensed child care complaints? Nope, that's question 1, my apologies.
Yeah.
Question 3 is on the very back of the packet. Should the Office of Child Care provide guidelines to child care providers regarding provider responses? So those are our 3 questions we're going to be addressing today. And the process that we have proposed is to, Dawn, who is the director of the Office of Child Care, is going to frame up and share with us just a little bit about what it means, give us a little bit of background and context, and then we'll split into small groups and assess the pros and cons that have been drafted for us, and assess the recommendation, and identify if you have any suggested changes to those draft recommendations. The staff did a great job providing us something just to react to, so we have something to start with that we can work from. We'll do that process for each of the 3 questions. We'll stay in our small group, and Dawn will frame up and give us background before we go into each question. And then at the very end of all 3 of them, we'll come back together and would like to hear your suggested changes, revisions, adjustments to the recommendation. We'll see where we're at, and ideally come to consensus with some adjustments you'd like to see in that recommendation. That makes sense for our process, and I'll review it one more time before we dive into it.
And how about explaining for the people on the phone what their small group looks like?
Yes.
Virtually.
Yes. So virtually, we will ask one of the staff people in the room to facilitate the dialogue with you on the phone and capture your suggestions, revisions, and also to take notes. And also for your small groups of 3 in the room, we'll also ask an early learning division staff person to join you, just to kind of be part of guiding your conversation and also to take notes into your thoughts. We will invite you, when we split into small groups of 3 or 4, to separate yourselves out. So we have at least 1 provider, 1 parent, ideally, depending on how many are here, another stakeholder, member of our community. So as much as we'd love to have all 3 child care providers in 1 group, we do want your voice heard and represented in each of the 3 small groups. Does that make sense? So whoever. And then, your phone. Okay, all right, great, all right. We are mighty voices today. Okay, just to reference also what's in your packet, there was a request at our last meeting to develop a glossary of terms. There's a beautiful glossary of terms that is on the first 2 pages. Just want you to note that's there, and we'll be using those throughout the remainder of our meetings together. Okay, I think we captured everything. Just a quick housekeeping reminder. We will be having some sandwiches delivered at some point in time during the middle. Restrooms are, as Bobby asked me earlier, all I know is you can go this way, this way, this way, this way. They're over there, on the other side of that wall. Keep going left, please. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And I think that is all. So, Dawn, we're going to try to move through our time together so we can really get to our recommendations. And hopefully we've allocated our time. Dawn, want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to go pretty high level but give time for questions, because I don't want to say things that maybe you already know. I'd rather, make sure that I'm covering all the points. So in the first part of your packet, you will see a document, the types of care overview. And I just kind of want to review this as a part of the packet. This is again, I think this went through some of the requests of kind of understanding the types of care. So you can see that we have 3 types of licensed care. There's registered families, which can care for no more than 10 children. There's certified family care that can care for no more than 16 children. And certified center, which there's not really a cap, but it's really based on the size of the room, so the square footage. So
your staff to child ratios and how many children you have are really based on your space, your usable space. And so those three types are what make up the licensed child care community of Oregon. The chart that's on the left, you can see that only about a third of our licensed facilities are certified centers. However, they hold 2/3 of the capacity of licensed care in Oregon. So we don't necessarily have data on the number of children, but we have data on what the capacity of each child care facility is. So that is just kind of to give you what the universe in Oregon looks like in terms of child care in Oregon. I also wanted to point out that we have a mapping tool about what was to the website, to the portal, which is available on the table, and we'll put it there. It was kind of a request that came out of the last meeting from someone, and it's available for you to take. I won't walk through it now, but if you're interested in understanding it more, you can definitely connect with Angela on that. So now I'd like to kind of dive into any questions on just kind of that overview.
The last three questions that we're going to talk about, complaints and things, do they pertain to all three of these?
Yes, they do. Yep.
There was one that didn't report, I remember last month.
Yeah. That is a regulated subsidy. We'll actually talk about that at the July meeting, actually, to kind of dig into that a little bit. But for this one, we're really just looking at the licensed facility, which would be all three of these types of care. All right. So the next page in your packet is kind of the start of question 1, just kind of some overview. And so the facts about finding documents really provided you key information about the different types of finding and which complaints are one. So you'll see a description of what the different findings are: valid, invalid, and unable to substantiate. Valid and invalid are fairly self-explanatory, but unable to substantiate, what that really means is that there's conflicting evidence or evidence is not available on whether the non-compliance has occurred. You'll also notice some screenshots on how these two, how these two types of information are currently displayed on the portal. You can see a complaint of a valid finding and an unable to substantiate. I think it's also important to note that in a national 2017 licensing survey, it showed that 23 out of 32 states only posted valid complaints. That's 72% of the states that are posting, that were meeting the CCF requirements at the time. So the next document that I'd like to draw your attention to is the life cycle of a complaint. And it's this document. And it really details out the process of what that complaint and how it moves from when Office of Child Care initially receives the complaint, making its way all the way to the portal. You can see there's an investigation, you determine findings, those findings then result in what gets populated onto the portal, depending on the finding and the investigation and how that went. The next page, the next couple pages, 3 through 5, also provide you a sample of a findings letter to show the connection between what the provider received and what the letter and what's posted on the portal. So when you look at like issue 1 on this sample letter, that is what gets posted on the portal in terms of that complaint. It's important to note that you can have one complaint that results in
Can someone mute themselves? I don't know who that was. Sorry, everybody. Can you still hear? Is your hearing still intact? Trying to see who it might be.
I hear Bill talking, but Bill, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. That was painful, but I can hear you.
Okay. figure out who that was?
Let's just hope they all muted themselves and then we won't.
No worries, no worries. I can hear you fine though, Dawn.
Okay, great. And Kara, you're good to go? Thank you.
All right. So, that's kind of the sample letter, and that is what populates the portal in terms of the narrative about what the finding was. The next,
Don, can I go back 1 second to the life cycle of the complaint? I think the asterisk at the bottom of that page is informative. I'm just wondering, I know that it's just a pilot, but how many joint patients are there or have there been?
yeah, so we are piloting this in 5 counties, and we've had well over 100. The last numbers I told you were just like 112. Okay. That was candid investigations that have been done, and so far they've been really, we've had reported to us that that's really helpful on both the DHS and on the child care side for the child welfare. We've also had some feedback from providers who also have appreciated not having to tell their story twice.
Right. Okay. And so what's the future of those joint investigations?
We don't know yet. I know that we are, I think that's a conversation we have to have with child welfare in terms of broadening it outside of those 5 areas. The pilot, we really look at it going until June 30, so we're right at that time in July to kind of start having that conversation about what would this look like to go statewide.
Can I just also add that I think we're going to dig into that more during, I forget which month's topic, but when we dig into child abuse, what information we show about child abuse, that we'll dig into a lot more. We'll provide a lot more background around that, what's happening with that tandem investigation, I would imagine.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll wait to ask for Bill's input until that session. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would, I think the only other thing that I would say is that these timelines are loose. I think that's part of what this is saying, because often when we are partnering with another agency, there can be reasons that a finding we don't complete. There's the general thing that happened, and then there can also be times when something may be delayed simply because there's some other investigations going on, and we don't want to get in the way of that. We want to partner as well. So then the last 2 pages in your packet are just 2 data graphs, 2 data sheets, and it really illustrates the number of complaints and what they're finding to provide you with some historical information on complaints over the years. For both these charts, I also just want to note again that there can be one complaint that can result in multiple findings. So the math won't add up. So don't think it'll add up, because as you can see from the sample letter. And you'll notice that the vast majority of the number of findings is the unable to substantiate. So as you review these materials prior to this meeting and just kind of that high-level overview, what questions kind of have been raised?
Question, follow up on 2. What other partner organizations might you speak up a little louder so they can pick you up?
My question is, in addition to child welfare, what other organizations or agencies might the Office of Child Care be partnering with during an investigation?
Often law enforcement, depending on the incident that may occur. That would be the primary other one outside of child welfare. With the self-sufficiency, the ERDC program, we definitely have conversations when there's something that happens in a child care facility as well.
And tagging onto that, when you say law enforcement, is that both the hear it for police and the DA.
Typically, it would start with like a police officer, maybe get to a detective, and then depending what happens with that case, you might end up interacting with a DA. So it's kind of as, depending on the severity and how far it moves in that process, this would kind of be.
We would interact.
You would.
Think of it like a funnel. There's this many complaints, this many get reported to the police, they make their way to DA, this many get charged. So not everything that gets reported makes it to the police necessarily, beyond the mandatory report. Close the screen. Yeah. Not everything that a patrol officer goes out on might result in a detective being involved. Not everything a detective or a further investigation occurs on might result in being reported to the DA's office. And not everything that comes to the DA's office is charged.
Thank you. Those instances definitely, it's very dependent on.
I have another question about the graph, the second one on page 7. Just obviously it's concerning to see that steep rise in the slope. And is that because we just have that many more providers, more kids in care, so of course they're going to be more reported or?
You know, so I wish I could give you a definitive answer. And I've asked around because I definitely knew that that was going to be a question. There hasn't been any research on it. I think that what we our hypothesis would be is that it's really because of more people being aware of childcare and being aware of calling complaints. We believe it could be an awareness, but we don't have any data or information to share. We really don't know exactly what that uptick is. We just are getting a lot more complaints.
I think with 211 being the new call center, a lot of the extra information too is put in with parents who are calling.
I think it's probably mobile, that it always kind of lands on awareness, like people know call it seems more.
Done on the chart, it shows valid and the valid on the portal, the valid complaints run the gamut from the ones they're not changing the diapers to a criminal offense.
Anything that's valid.
And do you have just a general estimate at which end of the spectrum do most of the valids fall? Diapers or criminal?
Oh, it would be, the criminal part of it is pretty minimal in childcare. It's going to be more the valid findings. There's a complaint that they were out of ratio. That isn't going to elevate to a criminal, but that's a lot of the valids that we might find.
Too many kids per child.
Yes.
At one time you were working on a rating of the severity and you came up with metrics. Is that still, did that ever get implemented?
We are actually waiting for the big rule change to implement the risk assessment rule, which gives a value. The rules of the probability of harm to occurring when breaking this rule.
That's going to help your question a lot. I loved it. The version of it I saw made so much sense because some of these things, as a parent, it's kind of like, well, I don't really care. Fine. It's valid, but it doesn't threaten my child's well-being, his health, his safety, and I don't really care. And some of them are like, oh my goodness. Right. And so now there's going to be a tool.
And the timeline on that is?
It is out and once we is probably in 2020. Get them passed, and then we're going to need a year because it's massive to get things implemented. That will give us time to get the risk assessment that will allow. Is this something that will be on a child care safety portal? I think it would be something that would be considered. I think we have to kind of get it developed before we have to come back and ask that.
So would that be but I was asking about diapers versus.
Like an outlet plug versus letting a child go outside on their own, different levels of childhood. So shout out, feeding. Okay. Okay, any other questions on these charts? Oh, yes. Any questions from people on the phone on any of this background material? No.
The only question I would have is, and again, it sounds like you don't have the clear answer for that, is why the jump in unable to substantiate for 2018? It seems that number last year in particular jumped radically, and I'm wondering, it just jumps out at me. The other numbers in the other areas seem somewhat the same, with the exception of that. And so I was just curious if there's any insight. That might be something to drill down into.
Yeah, I think the unable to substantiate is something we need to drill down into, in terms of the level of evidence that we have. I don't know, there is such a jump. It is a little out of proportion, but it's also, there is more. So I don't have an answer, Bill, in terms of that. I think that's something that obviously we want to understand more, because we don't understand it yet.
Given the staff to get all the complaints, some of those would be, okay.
And we respond to all complaints within 3 days, and most of them we get out within a day and a half. And actually, in the pilot community, sorry, it's a little off, but it goes to your question. In the pilot community, we're actually using our investigative specialists to go out on those complaints versus the regular licensed specialist.
So they have special training. Do you want to explain the difference in those two?
Sure. So a licensing specialist is they have a caseload of all their facilities. They go out and do the renewal visits. They open them up. And in the past, they always were the ones that would go out and assess a complaint. So in the pilot regions, the 5 counties where we have investigative specialists, and those are the staff that go out when there's a allegation of abuse in a child care facility in those piloted areas. And we're also having them go out on all complaints for both a fresh set of eyes, sort of look and assess the complaint. And so that was part of our evaluation with this pilot to see how that has helped.
Okay, any other questions? Background, all right. So we ready for question 1? Small group?
So let's go ahead and break into small groups and go to the back of the packet actually and take a quick look at what we have. We'll go to question 1, which is on page 1. It's in the back of your packet. Everybody have that? So you can see here that the question, should the portal display licensed child care complaints found invalid or unable to substantiate? And the current practice currently happening with the Early Learning Division now, with the Office of Child Care, is unable to substantiate complaint findings are available on the portal for 2 years. So those that, unable to substantiate are currently available on the portal for 2 years. And then the second practice is that complaints that were found invalid are not available on the portal.
Valid and unable to substantiate. Review that's only valid and unable to substantiate.
The recommendations from staff, and this is a draft recommendation just for us to have something to work from, is that invalids do not show on the portal, and that unable to substantiate findings do not show on the portal.
So the first recommendation is to just maintain the status quo.
The second
Only
bullet.
show valid.
Only show valid.
Clarification. Do not show the 2 years.
So we're, the keeping invalid, not showing.
Can you give us some background on why you made that?
Why that recommendation is listed? Sure.
So it was really a current practice that we did when somebody called us on the phone, that we provided 10 years of valid history and 2 years of unable. So when we put it publicly, we essentially mirrored what we did on the phone.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Why did you decide not to list cases that were unable to substantiate fairness? I mean,
Yeah.
some parents might say, well, I'd like to know about those. I just can't.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Why the decision was made not to put unable to substantiate on the portal
It's from the beginning.
from the very beginning?
The recommendation is now to change, to not put them on, to continue.
Well, no,
No,
they were, right now they're, you put them on, you're suggesting that you don't put them on. I'm just curious.
I think that's in some of the pros and cons. Okay. As part of that discussion, one, some complaints. There are examples where you might have somebody upset with you, so they call in multiple times to make a complaint. That's been feedback we've heard from providers. But I think that's part of the, be a good discussion that gets.
Yeah, I wanted to know what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
Well, I also see on your page, you had other states kind of doing some of the same things, but comparison, there's a comparison there. I'm interested to see that.
Okay. Any other questions on the phone or the video?
I have a question. Are we able to ask more questions after we break into small groups?
Sure.
There's some definitional things I'm not sure about, but I don't know if you want to do that now or later.
Why don't we go ahead and do it now so everyone has the same understanding before we step
Okay.
away?
So, if you look at the definition of what's considered a valid finding, able to substantiate, so it says here a valid finding is there is evidence that noncompliance occurred, and unable to substantiate is there is conflicting evidence. I guess my question is, if there's conflicting evidence, that means there's someone weighing toward yes and some weighing toward no, right? But if for valid finding, it just says there is evidence, you really mean there is unconflicted evidence or uncontradicted evidence? In other words, in every unable to substantiate situation where there's conflicting evidence, there's evidence of it. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm going to look at Jay if there's anything that he would like to do to help clarify that. I think that it's conflicting evidence. We have to be at 21% preponderance of the evidence.
51%. That was my other question. What standard do you use? Is it 51%?
Preponderance of the evidence.
Okay.
So if it's conflicting, we're like right at 50-50. Let's say we're not sure if that's when it's unable to substantiate.
So a 50-50 deal where there is evidence to happen,
There's
will
some,
be unable to substantiate.
depends like what evidence, like what, how confident, how good is the evidence?
Yeah.
Is some of what you're looking at. Abby, I don't know if, because you're the one that does this work, if you have anything you want to add?
So Abby, why don't you come on up and join us if you would, thank you.
Oftentimes for unable to substantiate, some of the evidence is just the complaint itself. So the person calling in and saying that they observed this or, something like that. And then we might go out in the field and investigate that, and the provider can just adamantly deny it. And then, so it's kind of a question I look to Jay on this, or about what do we weigh? Do we weigh what the complaint is and what the complainant says, or do we weigh what the provider or the child care facility has told us? Some other forms of evidence might be, oftentimes you hear that facilities are out of ratio. We might look at attendance records to see if they were, but perhaps you go in and you look at an attendance record and it says that they are out of ratio, but the child care provider might say, well, I just didn't sign in that day. So, but I was here in the room and present on that day. So it's it's weighing those document types of evidence versus what was just told to you in a complaint. And it's tough sometimes. It really is. But we do get the balance with, documentation that they were, out of ratio, for example, and then also maybe a statement from the teacher or provider on that day that says, yes, I didn't, this occurred. But that's why we have so many, I think, unable to substantiate, is because when the complaint comes in, that's all we have oftentimes. And then we have to go out and investigate it, and there's usually conflicting evidence when we go out.
So for valid finding, would another way of putting it be, it's more likely than not that the complaint is accurate?
Yeah. This happens all over the world. Says he ran the red light, and the person says it was yellow, or somebody says the officer was rude, and the officer wasn't rude, well said. These happen all the time. Well, not the rude stuff.
But I'm going to kind of stick my neck out on the provider side too, and again, it doesn't happen as much. But often as our R&R, we hear a lot of retaliatory pieces too. A parent can't make a payment, or oftentimes there's that conflict as well. And how do you figure that one out? Based off the other side of it. Yeah. So I mean, we get that a lot.
So let's go ahead and dive into small groups. Do you feel like you have enough information, or you need more questions clarified to be able to look at the pros and cons and the draft recommendation? Folks on the phone as well. Okay, staff are in the room, so we can ask questions if there's something that surfaces. So what I'd like to, let's maybe help me out here with splitting into groups. We're actually kind of naturally into nice sets of three groups of three, where the only thing I'm missing here is parents. So let's think about that. If we usually split, you want to go there, then that leaves you guys in a 2. So, want to swap? Want to trade? I'll trade. You want to trade, Bobby? Okay. Would you like to, Veronica? Okay, thank you. That was great. Thanks. So let's take about 10 minutes-ish, and I'll check in with you. And take a look at the pros and cons, and you'll see they're separated out from a provider perspective, from a parent perspective, a parent-guardian perspective. And then hone in on what changes would you make, what adjustments would you make, and then really look at that recommendation. And we have some notes here. So if staff also could join the table to kind of guide the conversation. And Angela, are you?
I'll do the phone, sure.
Okay, great. Angela will work with you on the phone. What adjustments would you make to the pros and cons, and what adjustments would you make to the recommendation? So we have Jason, great. Great. Thank you, Don. And Angela's on the phone. Abby, would you take this, please? Yeah.
Oh, you're
all right. So we're at 3:51. Let's plan to check back in a couple minutes after school.
This is my first rodeo.
Great. So here we go. I'll start off.
Hi.
I guess I could go over there. I'm trying to figure out a way to keep our conversation not getting too loud.
Angela, could you pick up the phone and talk into the phone receiver? I think that would help us to hear just you.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't lose you by hanging up on accident afterwards.
Angela, you could also mute the phone in the room and just call in on your cell phone. That might work as well.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'll do that. Okay. We're going to put it on mute. I'm going to mute you for now, but be thinking about, I wonder if you can talk amongst yourselves? Yeah, so talk amongst yourselves while I do that. If you want to dig into the question.
Okay, did you guys hear us?
Yes.
Who else do we have on the line? I'm just curious.
Hi, it's Reagan. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
So, why don't we just jump in? How do folks feel about the kind of recommendations and thoughts?
So as a provider, I have had completely unsubstantiated claims brought against me by parents who were upset because we said, actually, you have to pay your bill before the end of the month. And they said, well, no, we don't. And then when we said, if you don't pay, you can't come back, then they would be upset and make a claim about A, B, or C. What?
I'm sorry, can someone take notes for me while I'm getting set up? That would be great, because I don't want to miss anything that's being said, so, can someone?
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know that I'm going to say anything other than what's already on here, though.
So
yeah.
So the one thing I would offer, and when I'm looking at the pros and the cons, in particular the cons for the parent and the guardian, where it says doesn't display the potential pattern of similar complaints. So I appreciate what might be that may tell. This may not be the right platform for it to be captured. And so I'm wondering if there may be another vehicle for that to be captured as opposed to having this being is displayed on the public portal.
Right.
Because there may be, I do think there's the benefit of getting those themes. But again, I think as Kara was talking about, I think not all of them are going to be substantiated, and some could be for different reasons. And I think it could potentially penalize the provider or paint the provider in a negative light that wouldn't be necessarily justified.
Right. I think my hope would be that licensors or Office of Child Care or Early Learning Division or someone has oversight to be able to see that potential pattern. And then potentially that could also be tied in with, we have a quality rating system for child care providers. And so as child care providers are going through that quality rating system, that could be part of the review of quality as well.
And it may also eliminate their opportunity and the benefit or the need for some technical assistance of some sort. It will be more proactive.
Okay.
So, I agree with the recommendations of removing the unsubstantiated complaints. I've heard parents not quite understanding the portal because of those unsubstantiated ones being on there. And I've also heard complaints from providers, like you expressed, Kara. So that's my 2 cents.
I wonder if part of the complaint process could be, so one of the cons is parents may be confused if they make a complaint and it doesn't become a part of the history. I wonder if part of the complaint process could be your complaint will be investigated, and if it is found to be valid, it will be placed on the portal. Like that's just a once over that the parents receive when they call in to make a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. So let's see. So I'm going to write that as part of a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So the recommendation could provide on phone when receiving complaints, info that will only see on portal what is valid.
Mm-hmm.
What is investigated and found valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So was there anything else that you had mentioned that I need to maybe capture around changing in the pros and cons?
Only that when it doesn't display a potential pattern of similar complaints, that maybe we need to have some oversight. We need to make sure that there's still oversight over those potential patterns by the licensor or Office of Child Care investigator, or someone still has oversight over those patterns.
Yeah, I think the part thank you, Kara. The part I was thinking about when I offered that, it was like this: if it's not going to be the portal as the platform to capture the unsubstantiated, there may be another place where that can be captured and how that information is used. And again, it is not to be used necessarily in a punitive way, as opposed to maybe illuminating the areas or an opportunity for growth and development and technical assistance, and then being more proactive as opposed to reactive in support.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm writing, could capture unsubstantiated in other places than the portal, and be proactive by providing support.
Absolutely, especially if you're seeing the trends. If you're able to do the analysis and you're finding the trends, I think then that's an opportunity. You can really use that information.
So it sounds like the part of the thinking is that we just want to be sure that the Office of Child Care is tracking unsubstantiated by provider and using that data to drive supports and decision making around, or I guess maybe it sounds like just support, but that the portal itself doesn't necessarily need to be showing them. Right? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. And then, Lisa, are you there? Did you have any thought?
Yes, I am here. Well, I really don't like the unable to substantiate or even invalid complaints in public like that. I've talked to many providers, and they tell me how all of them, a lot of them are they can't substantiate. I mean, we get complaints here for restaurants that are pretty ridiculous, and if we were putting them on the website, it just not make any sense. So and another thing that I was just thinking is I've heard also how providers can learn and do things better when the Office of Child Care works with them and provide support versus being punitive. A lot of providers tell me, well, I love my certifier because I didn't know that I can do this or that, and now I know. And so I really truly believe that we shouldn't be punished them that way, which I feel is kind of severely if we put things on the website that are either invalid, or even if they're valid but they're not really big deals. Because if it's something that is minor, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what it is, but I don't know. I really, yeah. That's my opinion.
Great.
Not sure if it makes sense to you.
I just wrote down. Yeah, no, definitely. So the notes I took were that I just made a couple of notes that, in general, it doesn't make sense to show them here. Them being invalid and unable, and that for providers it works better when we provide support rather than being punitive. And then just kind of a side note that even some valids, when they're not big deals, like if there was a way to represent that on the portal, maybe.
That's exactly, right? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, and then Reagan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Well, I agree with the recommendations. I don't know if I have anything to add to the pro and cons, but I know from parent perspective that the unable to substantiate is confusing and they think that it is a credible claim, or a credible complaint. So I definitely, definitely feel supportive of moving that off of the portal. In addition, I've also heard from providers that it can be, well, they don't want it on their record, especially if it was unsubstantiated, that they'll have parents calling and asking them about an incident that in their perspective never occurred.
Right.
So, yeah, so I don't know if I have anything to change in the pros and cons, but I definitely support removing the unsubstantiated claims.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, everybody. Any other things we should consider or any other thoughts people wanted to share? You are all very efficient. We're an efficient group here, virtually. But yeah, any other thoughts?
No, nothing on my end. I think we worked this one through.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think we worked this one through. We're done.
Great. I agree. So we can just relax until everybody else is done. Sounds like the other teams are working away.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, they can see me right now. Yeah. I'm going to turn you back around so you can see the groups. And I'm going to hang up. So, and I'll come back on the phone for the next round in a little bit. Okay. Okay, bye for now.
Okay, so we're gonna be moving into question 2, which, if you turn to the next page, is how many years of a licensed facility history should be represented on the portal? And the current practice is that this actually will give you the background first before we talk about current practice. All right, Don. Okay, let me get our preventative. All right, so after the question 1, you should have a document that says background information, licensing history, length of time. And so in this on this page, it identifies what the best practices are for child care regulation. You may remember from the materials that we shared at our first meeting, and it's also on question 1, is that federal law requires 3 years of licensing information to be available online. And here within this document, you can see that NARA, which is the National Association of Regulatory Agencies, so they're like our professional organization, recommends that licensing information remain on the portal for at least 3 to 4 years and preferably longer. And the table that we provided provides a state comparison of the length of time that other states have licensing information available, and the majority of those states provide 3 years of information. You can see that Georgia has 2014 available, however, but the vast majority is 3 years. On the next page, I just want to point out one primary, these are some key timelines of key changes that we've made in our practices related to data quality. And I think the most relevant is the 2019 data quality assessment that we actually just completed May 30 of this year, in which we went in and staff went back 3 years and cross-referenced the case file, so the paper hard file, what is in our data system, and what is on the portal to ensure accuracy and completeness across those 3 different sources of where information gets fed into. And then on the next page is highlighted an example of one facility's history, and the first page is what 3 years of history would look like, all sitting onto one page. And then the next example shows that same facility and what it looks like across the 10 years of history, which is our current practice. So that is kind of the overview of where we're at, what things look like for us to have that next discussion. Any questions?
So what did you find with the audit?
Well, we're just analyzing that data, actually.
Oh, I mean, because this is a question of how much confidence should anybody have in what they find on the portal?
Right, and that was us to ensure confidence. And so what we found was we actually have one of the key things we found is that if something didn't match, maybe it's in the file and it's in CRIS, but it's not on the portal, it was a data migration issue, which as we're working to transfer those data migrations are issues. Angela, do you want to?
It just sounds like from what I've been hearing that those issues that have been identified, and Abby, you can maybe speak to this a little bit too, but have been, I think you're also reconciling between the two. There's been a lot of reconciling where if something needed to be where it needed to be, we're fixing that. So that's been part of the audit. So that's why the data will be better, is my understanding from the last 3, as a result of this process. We're going through and looking at the hard file, the database, and then what's going from the database to the portal. And reconciling that.
So it's not just looking at what it is, it's actually fixing what we can. So if there was not something entered into CRIS that's in the paper file, the part of the process in this was to then go in and get it entered into CRIS so that we have 3 years of accurate data. Any other questions?
I have a question. Maybe I'm mixing things here, but if you look about the survey of other states, how long the compliance history is available. So for example, Georgia or Utah is 3 years. Is that 3 years for everything? Unable to substantiate, valid, and invalid? It seems like in Oregon here, we do different time periods for different types of data, right? But here it just looks like these other states have one time period that applies for everything.
Well, and the vast majority of states only do valid. And so Utah does substantiated, so that would be our valid of 3 years.
This is licensing, is that right?
Childcare licensing within the different states.
Okay, I think Kevin's talking about the same form. I don't know, we're working on that.
Yeah, no.
It's the same thing, valid complaints.
Yes. I mean, the language is different across the state, but that would be for complaints. It includes complaints, substantiated, warning, citations, and civil penalties. They put all those things that are valid that did happen. They're up for 3 years.
And then the unable to substantiate are up for a different time period?
They're not on it.
They're not on it.
They're
so
not on
Oregon's
it.
an outlier then.
Yes.
But you only have some of the states listed here.
Right. We do know that, especially within the other package, just so that I quote it correctly. That's the main one. Yes, thank you, Heidi. We do know, based on a 2017 licensing survey, that I believe it was 70, so that would be all of the states that are posting. This is a new federal requirement, so not everybody is posting the information. That it was like 76%. Paper, I so apologize, I have too many packets, we're trying to be organized, there we go. 23 out of 32 states only posted valid complaints, 72%. And those are ones that have come into compliance with the new requirement. So that's 3/4 essentially only do the valid.
So if I understand correctly, what you're recommending is sort of based on this data quality assessment. So saying you're going to have a high confidence in data that goes back to 2016. So let's take it, am I right?
Yeah, do you want to go through the,
the
recommendations?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm trying to get back to this data piece.
Yeah.
That's why you chose that. And you're not going to go back further in this data quality assessment.
That was not, it was a pretty big list. We did peer review and then report to managers and stuff. So that's what we've done thus far. I think depending what the recommendation comes out being, you may have to think about that differently, but right now that was as far back as it's going to go.
So 3 years and then 2 years forward. Exactly.
So if you reference the current practice and the recommendation, the current practice is that the dates of the monitoring inspection visits display on the portal for 10 years. We just learned that was clarification that the proposed recommendation down below is that monitoring and inspection results will display on the portal for 3 years. And then increase to and remain at 5 years of information plus the current year. So go back 3 years, then increase to and remain at 5 years of information plus the current year on the portal. Does that make sense?
So longer than most states.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, in line, trying to follow also the best practice that NARA identified 3 to 4 and preferably longer.
And then also the current practice, jumping back up again, are the complaints. The current practice is complaints with substantiated valid findings and any substantiated non-compliances display on the portal for 10 years. And the recommendation going forward is that the complaints with substantiated valid findings and any substantiated non-compliances display on the portal for the same amount of time as the monitoring and inspection reports above. So that'd be past 3 years, plus and then increase to and remain at 5 years of information.
The reason for that, the reason for that shorter time period that expands because there's a lack of confidence in the data or some things you have you don't think are accurate, or both?
I think we did the data quality project to make sure that there's accuracy, that those 3 years were accurate. That's why we feel good about the 3 years moving forward. I think as data systems and perhaps we had a lot of changes, we're not as confident in that data.
But does that mean that you think there's data that's not accurate, or does that mean that you think that it's not complete?
Probably not.
Okay.
It would be more I think based on what we found in the 3 years, it's more about the completeness.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
There seems to be a new term in here that I hadn't heard, non-compliances.
So those are ones that, so a valid finding comes from a complaint. If a licensor Abby's out in a facility and sees that they're at a ratio, that would be a substantiated non-compliance.
It's not necessarily complaint, it's something.
The license was there and stopped.
So, another question, looking at these sheets that you put in, which are the portal example of 3 years history. So, complete visits, so this would be on the portal in this recommendation for 3 years. So what if the complaint visit ended up being unsubstantiated, but it's still in the report and monitoring report?
One of the CCDF requirements is that we have to post all visits and the findings of those. So ultimately, when we come into compliance with CCDF by September 30th of this year, right? There will actually be like information about that complaint visit posted on here as well. We just don't have it on there yet.
So how does that relate to the unsubstantiated?
It has to do with like the checklist. So let's look at a monitoring visit or a renewal visit. That would have the actual checklist that the licensor went out and did, and that would be attached to that a parent could open it up and see what the licensor saw. There might not be any non-compliance, but it would show what they saw.
So, I think I'm confused about what is on the safety portal and what's someplace else. Is everything on the safety portal, the complaints, the validated, and the inspection visits, and the checklist, and that's all on the safety portal?
I'm looking at Angela, she's working on the amendment.
Yeah, so what is on the portal currently and what you currently are seeing in your packet is representing all the visits that occur. So there's complaint visits, there's monitoring visits, there's all sorts of visits that the Office of Child Care does. What is missing and that we have to do by September 30th in order to come into compliance are summaries of those visits, so the reports of those visits. So when we meet that requirement that we have to do regardless to be in compliant with CCDF, you will see that it's still going to say complaint visit, but you will see a summary of that visit that says there were no valid findings or something like that. Technical assistance was given. But right now, because of the way it was designed initially, you do see if there are valid findings and you do see if they're unable to substantiate findings because that was the way it was designed initially.
Okay. But you're not going to get to look at the provider and see she's never had a valid finding or no substantiated out of compliance. You're not going to get a summary like that. You're going to have to go through every time OCC has been to that facility and looked for compliance, non-compliance, or whatever, substantiated not. On every visit, no summary?
That would be then if there was a valid finding, then that would be posted like underneath of it.
Yeah, but you can't go someplace and just say, Jane Smith, not valid.
I think we're talking about three different things.
Okay.
This is my passion. Because in the first question, we were talking about complaints. Now you're talking about licensing.
History.
And those are two different things. Now, you may be able to find them both maybe you'll find other stuff. This is more of a question than a statement, but I would think if I wanted to look at Renee's business, I could go and look at complaints against her, and I could look at her licensing history, and maybe I could look at something else. Is that accurate, or is it all lumped together?
It's gonna be together, but also split out separately.
Well, it's gonna be under her business.
It's gonna be under her
It's gonna be
business.
under different entries. Is that right?
But I have to go through every time you've been there to find out if she's ever had,
You would
valid
scroll.
and substantiated.
Which you have to look at.
You wouldn't have to.
You would scroll. You would have to scroll.
I'd have to scroll through the whole thing.
But not the individual
Not very
checklist.
user-friendly.
So, Bobby, you don't have to open up every checklist to see if there was a valid or a non-compliant. There will be that summary if there was something found.
Yeah.
So that you're not gonna have to open up every visit
Okay,
to
but
see.
if I've been in business for years, and you have visited me 15 times, as a parent, I'm gonna have to look at 15.
I think that's why we wanna know how long. That's why the question is, how long should we have information up?
Well, isn't part of this, it's actually two questions, what information, and then how do we provide it, right? So, like, we might want to address both, I'm not trying to step on toes, we might want to address both questions. What information should be available, and then it's a question of how to make it user-friendly. You could very easily make 20 years of history very user-friendly, or really hard, depending on how you provide it.
And the federal law for licensing history is 3 years.
But that
And
means
then-
you have to provide at least 3 years.
We have to
That's the
provide
bare
at
minimum.
least, that's the minimum, and then the NARA is 3 to 4, preferably more.
So how about if are you all comfortable if we incorporate that into you adding that in your recommendation? That one, address the length of time, and if you have thoughts about making it user-friendly, so that as a parent, you can easily access it. Would that fit?
So,
I have a question about that, actually. So, just like they stated, this is about how long the information is available.
yes.
The ease of access to that information is not planned currently to be a part of the discussion?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Thank you. That's such a great question.
And a great
So
memory.
you're gonna have to go right now. Parent focus, right, yeah, these are really just the policy.
Okay, so there's this group then address that.
We have like a whole nother plan of, I don't think of that.
Right.
That's not what it said, but there's actually, we'll have a full plan of doing parent focus group and engagement to really dig into the functionality of it versus the higher level policy discussion.
So then we should include any recommendations discussed in that now.
Yeah, I think that would be a great place.
If you have some, send it, we can.
But the focus is the policy question, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
I guess one more really quick question, and if this is off topic, just tell me, but is every valid finding also a non-compliant? Does that make sense?
It's a type of non-compliance, but we found the complaint to be valid. But if we observe it, it is a non-compliance.
But you have to observe it with your own eyes for it to be non-compliant. So basically,
That's
non-compliance
what
are
we're
the things that an employee witnesses, a state employee witnesses, investigator.
Correct. Or it could be information that comes to us from a partner agency is reported, and we have a specific type of non-compliance for that, that we wouldn't have had to see, but law enforcement or someone else has.
Whereas a finding is something that someone else witnessed told you about, who's outside of the circle of trust of state investigators.
Correct. So for example, I could go out on a complaint, I could have 4 allegations, maybe some are valid, some are invalid, but I can also have observed non-compliances on that visit that are not associated with the allegations within the complaint.
Okay. And there are serious non-compliances and regular non-compliances. But there's only one type of valid finding, not serious or regular. Okay.
And so we moved to a risk assessed rule model where you would actually have some of that delineated out.
Both complaints listed in the same place as non-compliant things, or is it section 4?
Currently, it's all
Right there.
part of the role.
So how about we continue with your small group discussion for 5 to 10 minutes. I think this is a shorter one. And then let's break, grab some sandwiches, run to the restroom and come back and we'll keep going. We're a little bit close on time, but these are really important questions, and it's most important to get this clarified. So again, really focus in on that recommendation that's here, and any adjustments, suggestions,
So I'm calling in team, or group, I should say, and I'll put you on mute for now, and then I'll join you via the phone.
I think I agree with the recommendation. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had a hard time hearing a lot of the exchanges that were going on in the room, so I'm not really sure where that flow of the conversation went. But yeah, the recommendation seemed fine.
Yeah, I think they were talking a lot about why was it 3 years expanding to 5 years, and oh, that's because we can be certain of the data as far as 3 years past right now.
Yeah.
And then I liked the part of thinking about including in our recommendation how to make it more user friendly, because I do think having like a summary report at the top, this provider has 3 valid findings, and then you click on the 3 and you're able to click next, 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 and just go through the 3 of them.
Right.
I think that would be a helpful summary to have at the top, because most people don't want to see that the licensor came and made sure that we had a hand washing sink and a food prep sink separate in every classroom. They don't care as long as we're following the rules.
Right.
I think, and then I do also think about the one con listed, that it's only a 5-year snapshot of facility history. It's really hard to cover up doing a bad job for 5 years. So I think having a 5-year snapshot is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It would demonstrate a provider's ability to care for kids.
Yeah, right on. Reagan, what are your thoughts, Reagan?
Oh, I think this one's really simple. I totally agree with the recommendations. I do agree with Bobby's comments about making it user friendly and not just showing every single time they came and did an inspection.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, user friendly is good. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm not really sure how they enter the data though. Wouldn't it be easier just to enter the whole thing, maybe scan it and enter it, or I mean, I'm not going to worry about that, but I'm thinking if they pick and choose and make it more simple, that's great, as long as it doesn't get too complicated.
Cool. Sounds good. So
So
we're good
Bill,
with
did
the
you
5-year.
share?
Yeah, we're good with the 5-year,
okay.
and then we're good with the getting a summary statement at the beginning, so it's going to be more accessible and relevant to actually potential questions families may have, as opposed to just a laundry list of all the visits that have happened. Again, just make it more accessible, more relevant, and more user-friendly.
I did actually have a question too, though. If the first question, the recommendation to question number 1 carries through, and the unable to substantiate claims, will they just automatically fall off of a provider's record, or will they still be on until we hit the 5th year out from now, or whenever the decision is adopted? I think that's my question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm writing that down real quick, and then I think I can share my understanding of that. First question. Really. Okay. So my understanding is if the first recommendation ends up being that unable to substantiate are not on the portal, then they won't be there as part of the history at all. But if the recommendation from the committee ends up being that they do want them there still, then they would, yes, be part of the 5-year history and then drop off too.
Okay, thank you.
Did that, okay. But feel free to ask the group too if you want other thoughts, but I think that's how it will work.
Okay.
Never hurts to double check. And that may come up by somebody else too, who knows.
Are we the fast group again? Did we go real fast?
You are the fast group, yeah. So no other pros or cons to this that you guys want to thought of, or you think this is a pretty good list?
Yeah.
Not that we have to think of new ones, but if there might be other. Yeah. It's probably pretty straightforward.
Sorry, I'm not showing my face. It's the way the computer is set up. Hi.
Oh, hey, Lisa.
Hi. This is the computer. I'm in a monitor.
I was wondering,
have my
I hear this voice coming from like afar. I'm like, my God, it's terrifying.
It's just I'm in a monitor versus the little laptop. I want to say hi.
Oh, so it's harder to move.
Yeah,
Hi.
it's the way it's like up here. Hello.
There you go. Here you're getting the beautiful view of a wonderful Holiday Inn Express hotel room in Ontario.
Oh, nice. Oh, you're in Canada.
No, I'm Ontario, Oregon.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, Oregon. Okay. I go to Canada right away. Sometimes I feel like I'm not from Oregon because I lived out of state for a long time, but I grew up here, so I'm a native Oregonian that lived out of state for a long time and then came back. So I get to feel both like I'm from here and like I'm not from here.
Yes, you probably seen
We
the
have one more
changes
minute
then.
to wrap up. Sorry, what?
I was just saying that if you left and then came back, you've seen big changes.
Yeah,
here
no,
in-
definitely.
In Portland and Oregon.
Though the nature is still pretty amazing, gotta say. Oregon does a great job of preserving nature. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I was thankful that we live in Bend the other day because we took a 20-minute drive and we were able to already be way out in the middle of the woods and go hiking and see this amazing huge waterfall, and we got to hike down behind the waterfall and my kids were like, ooh, adventure.
Oh, wow.
Adventure.
Cool.
We love hiking.
Yeah, it's great.
I love it.
Okay, so I think I'm going to, since we're done, I'm going to actually, one question for the group. How do you want to do the report out piece? Because I don't want to be, I prefer not to be the one to report out, though I am definitely happy to be taking notes, but I think it might be better if somebody from the group could report out, or if you wanted to take turns. And I could share the notes somehow, like I could put them on the camera maybe. but or if you remember, there's not a lot to remember. I'd be happy to jump in too if you wanted to back you up with comments and notes that I took. But just we have one more round of discussion, so at the end of that round, let's be thinking about if you're willing to do a report out or not by then. Okay. All right, so I'm going to sign off. Go
After
ahead.
this, we're taking a break for a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll have a break, I think probably a 10-minute, just because we're behind schedule, so I think it might be just 10 minutes, but yeah, we'll take a 10-minute break and then come back together to do the third question, which will be very quick, and then report outs and recommendations. So,
Sounds good.
So I'm going to hang up and I'll put you back to the group. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And let's come back together in a few minutes, and we'll continue to have kind of a working snack break, if that's okay. But we're not starting yet. All right, and Dawn can take us off into our bunch of questions. If you're finished, go ahead and grab a lovely snack now. Dawn. Not substantiated.
Lisa, what is that on your desk?
That's a true statement, no. I think there's some. Yeah, that don't have any.
Not on the board.
Either there's an error, or they're not like. And one of the functionalities that I know we need to make is under tool. So if you're putting it in just a little, maybe different, it may not.
And there's really confusing, they have on their sign, and what I can make like, they're spelling things that one's a number or one's spelled out. So I might be typing in the wrong way. So I'm just curious, it's not there.
My first guess without researching it would be there's something in the search, which is that functionality, yeah. How many parents in their family know like this? I'll say not, it wouldn't be none, probably very, very, very few. So if you think about it as a search family, but it would help you in that instance if you were coming up with, like if you couldn't find it, you could ask like the like.
I didn't have a ton of that moment, trying different ways, but I did think you could search by like city or zip code or whatever, and find ones that were close to you. So I could have done it different ways without having the exact spelling, but it's still trying.
For sure.
Yeah, I did, we used it more like, and put it in for, put an apostrophe in, or, and, it won't, it's too narrow, yeah, it won't even come, unlike our first system where you're kind of tricky, but yeah, ours is way too, sorry, okay, so.
Hello, Bobby.
Living large.
Spending a lot more time with my siblings and with my I've had 4 of my siblings come to say, oh, no kidding, that is so cool. Yeah. So it's just, that's probably the best. That's the best. That's by far the best part. And some people do a better job of balance how they work than I do. Yeah.
Are they all out of town?
No, well, yeah, but, mainly in work, can I grab you for,
Definitely write it down and give the answer. Okay, so for the,
Ashley here.
and so about.
My husband sent me a picture of the latest intake report when I got it there.
oh, no.
How about your brutal one?
It's really hard.
I have baby, one of my favorite little babies.
Oh, okay.
But information available.
Just wanted to talk.
Find,
Let's figure it out.
So, I'm gonna go buy a watch.
I like to say that I know that.
Even though I don't know.
Intimate reports, because whether it's when it happened, what happened, without the survey, and then what they did about it, trying to correct the behavior
Last time I left. I like that they don't. What she did, I know, I should stop. And as a parent, she's been bending it, and she's been, so. I wouldn't want other parents.
Well, it's not, it's not true.
But in daycare, there's okay, grab a sandwich and come on back. We're gonna keep moving forward.
Yeah. You're a push up the chair. You know why? Just flying is enough to do it. And I just happened on another trip. Have you thought of wearing compression socks? No, I thought that. I was reading online about it. I've heard that other people, and they wear compression socks when they fly. It's supposed to help them. And if they give us more room, I know. Well, it wasn't even a real long flight, and it still happened.
My wife should put more. Her whole family works with Leonard, so, yeah, brother's an engineer.
All right, let's go ahead and come back together. We'll, have a working snack. A working snack.
You work out in the field or in the shed?
All right, everyone. So we're going to dive into our last question, question 3, on the back of your packet. The question is, should the Office of Child Care provide guidelines to child care providers regarding the provider responses? And the current practice is that the Office of Child Care does not provide guidelines to providers regarding findings, responses submitted that become part of the facility's history in the portal. The recommendation, the draft recommendation for you all is, yes, we should provide guidelines to providers. And possible guideline examples are, be sure not to include the names of the individuals. Remember, this letter is a representation of your business. Letters look more professional when they are typed and have no spelling errors. Profanity is not recommended. The focus of the letter should be specific to the rule finding and avoid including personal comments about licensing specialists. So, Dawn?
Sure, so in the packet of information that you have, you can see that in 2014, we did start posting some on a complaint website that we have. And then we go through a redaction, it's reviewed before we get it posted to make sure that there's no confidential information in there.
what we really wanted to kind of provide you were 2 examples of what we have received in the past. So the first example you can see is handwritten on a piece of notebook paper, and that we redacted the last name of the person who submitted it. And then the second example is one where the provider types it up and submits it. Our current practice is it goes up regardless of how the provider puts it up there, provides it to us. And so those are that's what we currently have in terms of posting the responses. And this is a response currently for anything any findings that is posted on the board.
Questions for Don? Why do you say profanity is not recommended rather than allowed?
I think because I don't know that we can really regulate that. We don't have a rule. I think it could be something that we could add. I want to check with my DOJ.
Okay, I know this is already surfaced in your conversation. It's been coming up in the first 2 questions. So let's go ahead and let's try for 5 minutes. I'm guessing you've already talked about it. If we need more time, we can take it. Try for 5 minutes again, focus in on that recommendation. Do you agree with it? If not, what would you change? What adjustments? Okay? And then we're going to come back all together and hear the adjustments and recommendations you have for those recommendations, all 3 of the recommendations. Okay. Oh, sorry, she. I'm holding the sheet in front of me. Okay. You have it? You don't need this, right? Here's water. I can't remember. Okay.
Okay, I am here.
I don't think I was clear on whether the responses are something that would be posted to the public. I feel like that should be in the guidance where it says, like, you know, how to write kind of a professional looking letter, and then please remember your, families might see this, or just if it is posted to the public, I feel like that should be expressly told to the child care provider.
I don't know if it's specifically listed in the letter, but our licensor has told us when we had a valid non-compliance that we should write a response because it would be put on the website with the finding. And so our licensor was clear about it, but I'm not sure if it's actually in the findings letter.
So then I would add that in the possible guidance examples part, just letting the provider know that it would be posted to the public.
Yeah.
So you're
sorry,
suggesting
Reagan,
that the
I'm sorry, Reagan, you blocked out. What was it? What was the recommendation for language?
So my recommendation is that under the possible guideline examples, so the kind of light green recommendations, yes, we should. Okay. And you say like what kind of guidelines we would give. I would include something saying that your response will be posted to the public.
Yeah.
Or posted on the portal, or however they want to say it.
At the very bottom of page 4 in our packet, it starts to talk about that, but it doesn't actually say that it will be posted on the website. It says it will become part of your record and it will be included whenever information about your compliance history is disclosed. But I think this letter template was made before we had the safety portal because it only says, we encourage you to limit any response to 1 page so we can read your exact words to anyone asking about compliance history in your file. So it's limiting to only phone calls asking about compliance history. So maybe an update of that little blurb at the bottom, or if we're also going to be sending a separate guidance letter with the findings letter, that it would be super clear about that.
So you're talking about, Kara, the packet? What packet are you referring to?
Our information packet for today on page 4.
Oh.
At the bottom of page 4 of it. It gives an example of a findings letter.
Yep.
And if you look, well, I think it's page 4. It says page 4 at the bottom.
I'll go through it. I'm like, wait, what?
It says page 4 at the bottom, but it's not actually page 4, is it? Page 2. Okay. Yeah. It says page 4 at the bottom. There we go. It's the findings letter. It looks like this. It says sample.
Oh, the findings letter.
The second page.
Okay, okay. Got it.
Second page over here.
Yes.
At the very bottom of that second page, it has a little, you may submit a written response to this letter.
So it sounds like another recommendation, part of the recommendation is to update that blurb in the findings letter.
Yeah, in the findings letter, or maybe that blurb is separate in the letter containing guidance about how to submit your response. And I think it's super helpful. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the cons listed. Well, I mean, I guess if they're going to redact something, then it would be frustrating for me if I felt like that portion was important to my response. But it looks like they were only redacting proper names. And so that wouldn't be a concern to me necessarily. I would prefer that they give me guidelines for how to write a response, because remembering the first time that I ever wrote a response, I had no idea what I was doing. And it would have been super helpful to have someone say, you need to make sure you include the reference number. You need to make sure that you're not using people's names. You need to make sure that you include in your response the actions that you've taken to correct the issue.
Those are good.
Oh, it's a big deal. It is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Important.
Yeah.
So, does anything that you would change to the recommendation, which, I mean, I've listed these additional pieces about the guideline, but is there any changes that you would make to providing guidelines? Like, does the group think, yes, guidelines should be provided, like a separate, like a guide, provide a response guideline sheet or something like that? Or no? But it sounds like yes.
I think so. Yes, I would say yes.
And then, so Kara and Bill and Reagan, you're all, yeah, okay, I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true that some providers get busy and well, they don't read everything, but if it's important like this, I think it should be provided, and I'm sure they would read it. Yes.
Great. So I know. Wonderful.
Kids are not. That's one thing that I realize when I do my inspections is that they are very focused on the kids, and paperwork is, well, yeah, but if it's this important, I definitely agree.
Great. Okay, so I'm gonna hang up now, and then have you guys decided who will report out? You ready, prepared for that reality? Okay, so be prepared. No, it can't be me. Okay, it'll be good. I'm going to sign off now. Okay, bye.
Okay.
I nominate Reagan because she doesn't have to worry about having a camera on her. How do you feel about that, Reagan?
I agree.
I agree too.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Yes.
Notes. And I'm quoting on every one of the questions, because I'm not sure if I We'll do a great job on every one of them.
Suggestions, so at our next meeting, we can, see all of our thoughts put together, and come to agreement, hopefully, on what that recommendation is. Does that sound doable?
So don't come to consensus tonight.
I think we're not gonna be able to do that. However, what I would ask for is, when we look at all of the suggestions and recommendations, share what let's look for overlap. Let's look for some commonality where you felt really strongly. That will help us, develop the draft recommendation. Does that make sense? So it's kind of conceptually, I think we're gonna see where we are, and if we have some general themes that are bubbling over some. So, all right, so, maybe Bobby, what your question was, especially on the recommendation, did you have some adjustments or recommendations, suggestions?
The recommendation from this group was that, to keep the current practice of having, unable to substantiate, or allegations of unable to substantiate for 2 years, and, continue posting valid findings, substantiated non-compliance.
Okay.
And invalid, we didn't even talk about invalid.
Abby, can you see that? We aren't able to quite hear.
Sorry. So keep the current practice for 2 years, unable to, and don't show the invalid. So just
Don't show the invalid. Okay. Get back into, no, okay. You know, we're going at our most. No. Anything else?
There were some other, things to consider. It's not really, are we gonna go, is there gonna be a separate time for kind of general feedback, or is it?
Go ahead.
So, that there was kind of a consensus that unable to substantiate is confusing, and that we, it might be clearer for parents if there was a clearer definition of unable to substantiate. You could even see that in this group, I think. And then also, if there was, and this is again about how information is displaying on the portal, that if there was some kind of walkthrough for parents, how to use it, how to interpret the information that's there, kind of highlighting what we kind of generalize as serious violations, or as Stephanie pointed out, the things that parents may really care about, in terms of how do you separate those violations versus others, right? So that risk assessment rule.
Risk assessment, yeah. Kind of differentiating the difference between really serious and really not.
And there was kind of consensus that parents want as much information as possible, and that you're not able to establish patterns or see a full history when you take the audio off, right?
Okay, but we were balancing, parents want access to everything, but there was a concern that they have easy access to like a summary or something.
Yep.
I don't know.
I think there was some.
Oh, that's the next question.
It kind of goes over
But
all
it goes
three.
over all three.
Yeah.
We think they
Yeah.
access,
Right.
the access, we talked a lot about that.
We did. Right. Okay, right, that's great. Okay, any other things to add? Okay. Renee, Veronica, and Kevin had to leave. Jay, I think, did you capture all the notes?
Yes, yeah. So on first, we want the unable to substantiate to remain. Make sure the providers have an opportunity for a clear rebuttal.
Hold on, is that the current practice?
Yeah, unable to substantiate is on.
Okay, we're just gonna, okay?
And sometimes on the portal, it's the rebuttal is not necessarily clearly linked. If there's multiple allegations, sometimes the rebuttal is only linked to the first allegation. So we want more clear linking of the provider rebuttal to each particular allegation. So we'll have an allegation and rebuttal. So too much allegations. On invalid, they want to keep it as is and not have it on the portal, but also have sort of a general notice someplace that if complaints are determined to be invalid, you're not going to show up here. But if you want to ask for it, basically right now they have to do a public records request. But some kind of indication that if you want to try and get invalid, not by person, but in general, not by the provider, but if you want to get invalid, you're going to have to go to this. So, as noted, a general feel for information that that permeated all three of our discussions. Please remember if I missed something, let me also a general, that the portal needs the usability.
Usability, so this easy access,
Yeah.
kind of usability, gotcha, okay?
Confusing
There's a
access.
theme surfacing here.
Yeah. And overall proactive.
Pro access, which is more so is better. Pro access.
So Jay, were you suggesting that there be an alternative to needing to make a public record request if you want it to be invalid?
I wasn't, but the group wanted whatever connected, wanted to know that there may be invalids out there and that you can get them somehow. Right now, the status quo, which we didn't talk, is public records request.
So there's this feeling of, or if it's not there, if I don't see it, it's not there. It could be the case that something is there, but we're just not seeing it. Yeah.
So let parents know that, just so people.
Okay, great. Okay. Is that all for you all?
On question one.
Okay. Angela and folks on the phone.
So I'll do it, folks on the phone, since the note takers reported out. I was going to have somebody on the phone, but I'll do it. So we actually are recommending, the group thought that the recommendation was good.
Okay.
That, no, not current practice. Yeah.
You like the recommendation? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That to remove the unable to substantiate,
Okay.
that, you know, you could provide on the phone when receiving complaint info. Like there was a way to let people know about when valids will go to the portal or not, to kind of address that con of parents being confused if you make a complaint and it's not on the portal, that we could address that by letting people know when they're making a complaint that this is the process, that it shows up on the portal if it's found valid. Folks also thought that you could capture unsubstantiated information in other places and be proactive by providing support when seeing trends. So this group thought that it would be important for the Office of Child Care to be tracking unsubstantiated and to be knowledgeable of them and identifying trends as they happen, but that it wouldn't be part of the portal, but that the Office of Child Care would be proactive in going to those providers and providing more support based on any sort of trends to address whatever potential issues were happening. And group, at the end of this, I'll let you chime in if I missed anything. Somebody also mentioned that parents are confused. They find the unsubstantiated label confusing. And let's see, that people liked, there was a statement about providers, it works better when the Office of Child Care provides support rather than being punitive. Somebody also said it doesn't make sense to show there. Providers also don't like having something that wasn't found valid to be on their record. And then someone said, just mentioned that maybe even valids when they're not big deals, like a way to make that clear that even though it's valid, it's a minor thing.
So that differentiation between serious and not.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Any from the folks? Did I miss anything? Phone or okay. Thanks.
Okay, so all right, let's hear from our last group, Sue and Jared. More.
Everything they said.
Yeah.
So, we covered probably everything that everybody talked about. We actually went with the recommendation.
We did.
But there was a lot of discussion about it, and I think our discussion centered around parents wanting to have information, but caregivers wanting fairness in what is being shown on the portal. And so that was the crux of the discussion, but we went with recommendation. But then we discussed talked about the patterns. You could have 30 unsubstantiated complaints, and none of that would ever show up, and, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, maybe not. But somehow we think that it would be important that people know that, but we didn't know how to get there. And then we saw this. I don't know if everybody saw this, but at the very top it says complaint visits is one of the things that is listed here. So we assumed that meant it would list how many times a complaint was filed against someone. So if there was 30 complaints, even if unsubstantiated, they would show up here as 30 complaints.
It's true.
But it wouldn't say what the complaint was.
It wouldn't have the allegation.
It wouldn't have.
It would have the
So
result of the
that kind
visit.
of got us to the point where we said, well, I guess the unsubstantiated are being recorded because it's showing 30 visits. That makes sense to anyone.
And that's required by the Fed, the housing visit. So
Yeah.
this isn't optional.
Yeah,
These
sure.
complaint visit reports have to
Yeah.
be on the portal.
So,
The reports, yeah.
so in many respects, valid, not valid, unsubstantiated are all going to be listed on this form, is the way I understand it. So I guess we've gotten to the point where you're going to, unsubstantiated are going to be, there's going to be a number there. So then you get to the point of how does someone get to that information? And as we discussed, I said, how many public records requests do you get from a parent that wants to see complaints? And we determined probably 0 or 2 or very few. So I guess that is going to be the dilemma, is how we record unsubstantiated complaints.
No, I think that's it. I mean, in a way, this form almost negates the question. Because they are on the portal.
Yeah.
But you won't see the allegation. You won't see the rule that was maybe broken.
And I never thought that it showed me that complaints were being filed. I don't think it does.
I think
No, that one doesn't.
No, I'm sorry, the one that, I meant the one.
Yeah, okay.
I think
I
that
mean, just that it said complaint visit didn't tell me a complaint had been filed.
Oh, but now you know it.
Yeah, but we're trying to make it so that any parent can understand it.
Well, that doesn't do it. We would know, because we've sat in this room, if there was 20 on here and there was only one listed underneath it, we'd know that 19 of them were substantiated and one of them was. But the real world isn't going to know that.
And I think if you look at it from a real world perspective, not just a parent looking at it, it actually, I think that would actually work against the providers. Because as a parent, if I see 30 complaint visits but no information about what those were for, I'm just going to skip right past
That's
it.
exactly right. That's 100% correct.
If I can read what the complaints were and be like, oh, those are tiny little things, not a big deal, then I'll still consider them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the more information comes in. Thank you for that. Yeah.
But isn't it true that the complaint history, it's not going to be a number, it's going to be quick?
Distinguishing between the more serious violation and those that weren't serious violations. The serious violation being posted for 10 years and the not serious violations or less than serious being posted for 5 years, but with a question mark. That seems like reasonable, but it wasn't a solid. This is the perfect number. other than, once again, the rest of the group was access, enforcement, and disclosure of information.
Okay. We also discussed I think that's where we came along to the train of thought of seriousness. Right now, everything kind of falls into one big phase. And you could have your one fell off the tree, or I mean, what's the scenario? Oh, it's over the busted lip, or someone complained that their child was seen climbing a tree, unsupervised, or like, so there needs to be some sort of clarification. Okay, thank you, Veronica. Angela, folks on the phone, question 2.
So the folks on the phone, agreed with the recommendations.
Okay.
The one person mentioned that it was hard to cover up doing a bad job for 5 years, so 5 years seems, is a good amount of time to show what someone's doing. And there was a question about how this question relates to question 1, like regarding unable to substantiate. So depending on how that goes, does that also apply to this time span? And my thinking is that it does, but I just wanted to make a note that that was a question just to confirm with the group. Several people mentioned too that they liked the summary at the top idea. So making it user-friendly is a good idea. But that in general, the folks on the phone thought that 5 years was good.
Okay, great, thank you. Abby and team, they support the recommendation, and similar to what Angela stated about with the 2 years of unable to substantiate, it sounds like there's that information will be coming across anyway, which I didn't even do. Reading that up. But then also this group also mentioned something about having like a summary of complaints, or and maybe only including the valids within the summary, and that you have to dig deeper for like opening a PDF to get to and able to substantiate. And then that again there was talk about risk assessment rules. And then also just, again, how information is accessed on the portal and how it can be divided to make it make more sense. Yes. Great. Okay.
The only thing I added, throughout all 3 questions, there's a question of scaring parents. And confusing parents and scaring parents.
Yeah.
Two things. So it seems like whatever we do, it came up over and over again, so it should be kind of out there and named. And so there was a lot of waiting for the risk assessment, because we think risk assessment could reduce parent fear or focus them, help them, because it's really hard to differentiate.
Right.
So confusing, scaring, and the risk assessment came up in all of our.
It's surfacing around the room.
Yeah, it's
and on the phone.
It's really
the common thing.
everything.
Thank you. Okay.
We went with recommendation. We got, went up to 5 years of amount of time. And we have some of the good things. Don't get to anything.
Okay. So question 2, we've got a lot more agreement surfacing here, and those themes are becoming clear. Access, usability, sharing, confusing parents. Great. Okay, question 3. Chairman, do you want to kick us off this time? We'll go the other way.
We were fine with the recommendation.
Okay.
We thought that caregivers should be able to have a rebuttal to any complaint. And we talked about the guidelines, and I think those are okay. We actually said that how a response is written, or how it looks, or how it would be a reflection of the caregiver itself. So
We agreed with the recommendation as it's written, and it was brought up that it's just guidance. Yeah. That it doesn't mean that they have to use it, but it might, that they don't have to use it. It's just guidance. Oh, and we did other things we thought of were, like letter translation, like if something came in, going kind of both ways, like if you, have a response that's written in Spanish, and that's how it appears on the portal, because it's a PDF, like, would it be nice to have it in English as well, or the same way, if it's in English, maybe you want it in another language, so just brought up into being. Yeah, that's something. And like an option if you wanted. Okay.
But none of us are fans of Google.
Okay.
We also mentioned
right? Yeah. Oh, yes, having a template. A template, to fill out a response. Yes, but they could use it they wanted. Yes, it could be a resource. And then, again, this was Jay brought this up as part of number 1, is the confusion about what response goes to what issue. So how to clearly differentiate, because currently it's just all the provider's response, and if there were multiple valid findings, you wouldn't be able to know just opening that up unless it was clearly identified. Great. Okay. Good. All right. Angela.
So the folks on the phone also agreed that, yes, with the recommendation to provide guidelines, and some other potential guidelines would be just to make it clear that your response will be posted to the public in the, in the guidelines document, that you, it helps, you would want to include the reference number, include actions you took to respond. Those are the recommendations, like helpful tips on for writing a provider response. And then we also maybe would want to add to the blurb at the bottom of the findings letter, because there's, Tara actually pointed out that there's a statement in the bottom of findings letter about provider responses. So to potentially add a statement there clarifying that your response will be posted to the portal too.
Great. Okay. Great. All right.
On the recommendation, yes, guidelines should be provided. Another time, that should be a super low area for providers to be able to respond to perhaps smartphone entry. We have the technology now for that, but our data system maybe will be a possibility someday. But wants to make it as easy as possible to get the provider response. For those providers who don't have computers or don't think that handwriting on note is professional, so get a professional response, easy to do. Some ground rules should be set. For example, no personal attacks. Also, one of our group members thought that we could prohibit personal profanity. So those were the You could say it was a reference to Yelp review standards.
Yelp, right? Okay, gotcha. Right. Okay. Great. Okay. This one was a little bit clearer and easier. Started at the hard. So so let me check in. Does it feel like we, in general, have agreement around the 3 questions with the caveat number 1 needs to be reworked given what we found?
Or discussed.
Or discussed.
Like we need to, I think the group, needs a chance to advocate. People can, do the whole 5-finger thing.
Right. But
or I don't know.
I think we need staff to come back and tell us. I mean, in a way, I think number 1's off the table. I think it's gone because it's mandated that those reports be on the portal.
But it's showing the allegations.
Complaint report.
Visits have to be there.
On the portal.
That's what they're saying. I mean, that's
Yeah, but
they do some research
it
there.
looked really, it looked really different. It was treated the same. So I don't think we're done. I think that's still on the table.
We're not done on questions.
We're not
Thank
done.
you, Stephanie. That was so clearly said. We've got some work to do and some discussion points to bring back to you as we sort through the work you've already done, your thinking, and let's incorporate that into some additional staff suggestions for us to think about in our next meeting. Does that work? Okay, I know we've got a calendar, so I'm looking at Angela. Am I okay?
We do have a tight calendar.
Okay. Agreement on questions 2 and 3. Good work, gentlemen. We did get to discussion. All right, so where we're headed is next month, we'll bring back the work from today, so we're clear and we can have a little more discussion and do our 5-finger voting. What is our topic for next month?
Yes, so for July,
Question number 1.
question of the
Yeah.
we will be grappling with the question, should the portal show information for licensed active facilities
Only.
only? So currently, there's other facilities, some that are closed show. We'll be taking into consideration our current practice, which is histories of licensed, current practice, histories of licensed facilities that are no longer active, investigations of illegal care, and regulated subsidy providers that do not cleanly fall under OCC's level of oversight. Whoa, those staff recommendations are going to be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so like this time, your information will be shared with you in advance. I really encourage you to spend time reading it before you come. Shannon?
Oh, well, today's information, for those who didn't come, will they get a chance to look at those things too? Or if they weren't here, then
Right.
new to lose, or are they? I guess that's my question, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna probably get them coming back.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
Shannon, can you let us try to figure out how to sort through this material and what makes sense to send out? Because I think the short answer is yes, and we've got to figure out sort of how to capture it, so that it's useful. So we don't send pages.
Right.
You know what I mean? But great question, and thank you for raising that.
I don't know if anybody has time to talk to them, but my experience is when you miss a meeting, it's really easy to miss the next one, because you just don't feel like you're, so, anyway. So one, I don't know if there's person power, but it could, I mean, even some of us in the group, I mean, I just think it would increase participation, like if we just called and said, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Because I think in my experience too, that some of them come back and put a hitch in the plan and we're already going in another direction.
We're already moving. Yeah. No, that's great. Very briefly, let's just do a real quick, what went well today, and what suggestions and adjustments would you make for next time? Let's start off with what suggestions would you make for next time?
So I think it'd be useful for the whole group and for myself as well, is we have a sort of a list of everything that's on the portal, and then everything that is sort of a list, and then explain it, and then everything that might be added or taken away from the portal. We had sort of like, this is the information.
A graphic of those three.
Excuse me.
A graphic of those three.
Just sort of like a list. So we talked about, for example, somebody's asking me specific questions about that separate injuries page. What goes in there? How long is that included?
I think I may, that data map that Dawn mentioned, I put together that I hadn't sent out yet to the group, but it may respond to that. And so we were going to include it as part of the follow-up materials to this meeting, so that everybody would see it, and then spend a little bit of time talking about it maybe in the next meeting. But I think I did a very high-level one because somebody in the first meeting had requested a high-level data map of where all the pieces live. So, yeah.
Folks on the phone and others in the room, anything you suggest for changing or adjusting next time?
I don't know if it's changed, but a summary of question 1, the issues, I think would be nice to have, because we might forget some of them, or the folks who weren't here, that would bring them up real fast. it. I really want to thank staff for putting this together. You saved us 6 meetings. I mean that sincerely. We would have been floundering without knowing the questions. So I just want to thank you. You did a great job.
And I like the small groups. Small groups? That was my thought, that was great. And that we were mixed up. Yeah.
Folks on the phone, anything you'd like to add for changes or things that went well for you today?
All good.
And that I hear
Nope,
from parents.
I'm fine. The group discussion for on the folks on the phone went well, so thank you for facilitating that conversation. That was great. I really do appreciate that. I think just technically, I think it was hard to hear some of the discussions from folks or other folks in the room. So that was all. But that's on me for not being in the room. So not really, but.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Any others?
Thank you.
Thumbs up? Yeah.
Abby, do you want to finish?
Oh, it was enlightening for me to sit in a room and hear all the perspectives, because I have a licensing specialist. It was great to hear.
I enjoyed the question, like the format, how the question was, and what the current practice and education staff. That was really helpful when we're having.
Chief Moore and I really deferred to Andrea and Boyd. That was really what this part was. With the providers as well, but your voices have been really, really important. So thanks for showing up.
Thank you all. We're 3 minutes over. Worked hard to get here. Really great work today. Thank you, and we'll bring back.
Heidi, just one announcement. Next month, we'll be in this building, but we'll be in a different room.
Great.
So we'll be in the training room, which is kind of across, I can't figure out where I'm at.
It's over in that corner.
It's over in that corner.
Still off the front
Yes,
lobby.
yes. And it has windows, so if you're a window
Yay.
person, it has windows.
All right. And then just as a reminder, in order to leave this building, phone friends, you don't need to worry about that, but you will need to
So
go out.
thank you on the phone. I'm gonna end the webinar now. Bye. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
And in fact, we're part of.
Hi, thank you, everybody on the phone.
Oh, I'll remember that next time I'm talking to